Good morning, good afternoon, everyone.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending from where you are connecting. Let's wait for some 15-20 seconds to let people joining the room. I see that we have 11 people. Okay, so a little bit of preparation before this best practice sharing session. I'm very pleased to have our first best practice sharing session. Today it's my first one since I joined, since I upgraded my role and overseeing clean cargo program as well. So this is my first, so hopefully it will be very positive. Before we start, a little bit of, let's say, homework for everyone about antitrust. I would like to remind the audience that to read carefully this slide. So you should not engage in discussions that could result in the allocation of customer markets, fixing of prices, limitation of production, and so on. Discuss organization decision about target, commercial target, or working with your customers, supply, third parties, and as well remaining silent in a discussion, including formal meetings that goes beyond the proper subject. So while participants might discuss potential standards, the nature of which will be objective and consistent with the objectives of the project, each participant must make their own independent decision regarding the conduct of this business, including decision about whether to adopt standards and the nature of any such potential standard. So please make sure that everything is digested. So if you have any doubts about antitrust, please reach out while the session is ongoing, and we'd be happy to disclose more. Okay, so just a bit of a word about ourselves hosting this best practice sharing session. The session, for who's not a member, is hosted by the Clean Cargo Program, which is part of the Maritime Team as Smart Freight Center, which is an organization that is committed to support logistic decarbonization, and we are active on all the mode of transport, and maritime is one of them. Green Cargo particularly is a collaborative partnership between ocean container carriers, logistics service providers, and cargo owners, or shippers if you prefer, focus on tracking and reducing greenhouse gas emissions from container shipping and sharing ocean container freight decarbonization best practices. We currently cover more than 85% of the global volume of carrier capacity, and we have a very strong community. Currently, we're running beyond 140 participants among all the segment. And just a bit of names that you might recognize from this slide. You have some carriers, freight forwarders, shippers, and what we call others that are fuel providers and service providers. So you can find the full list of the company that agreed to share the logos on this link. If you want to know more and you're not familiar, please just send us a message on the chat, and we'll be more than happy to point you in the right direction. I will keep this presentation short, but for who's not part of the SFC family, please feel free to reach out either during or after this best practice sharing session. It's me, the program manager of Maritime, Giulio Venier, or you can also reach out to my colleague that is also gently in this meeting today, who is Julia Kornostaeva, our junior project manager for the Maritime team. And with that said, I would like to officially kick off this session, and I would like to leave the floor to Kirsten. And before to Kirsten Orschulok, I hope that I spell your surname correctly. So she has a very interesting presentation on green reefers. So before we delve into that, we would like to ask the audience a general question. So let me see if I can launch this this poll.
I can do it for you, Julio, if you want.
Yes, thank you. That would be super appreciated. Okay, so as you can see on your screen, we would like to know, according to the 2025 Clean Cargo performance data, what is, in your opinion, the average percentage increase in CO2 equivalent emission factors when switching from a standard dry container to a reefer or refrigerated unit on the same trade lane? Please submit your answer. Okay. I see that most of the people are answering. There's definitely quite a consensus, I would say, around the 60%, and is followed by the 40%. Okay. So definitely, I will stop sharing. Definitely, the right answer was 60%. So we see that between 50 and 60% is an average value for this difference. So well done, everyone. Very prepared audience. So with that said, please, Kirsten, the floor is yours. Thank you so much for being here today and really looking forward for this presentation.
Thank you very much. Excuse me. Also for the invitation to the Smart Freight Center. It's a pleasure for me to present our project here. I prepared some slides, but the main aim from my side is also to have this dialogue with all of you here in the call regarding what are the possibilities when it comes to the topic around greener reefers in general. My name is Kirsten Orschulok. I'm the project lead of the project Greener Reefers, and I will guide you a little bit about the topic itself, but maybe not all of you are aware about what is GIZ. So my presentation, again, I'm looking forward to have this dialogue with all of you, is clustered by these 4 chapters. And let me kick off with who is the GIZ? So GIZ is the official name, we have no translation, is Deutsche Gesellschaft für Internationale Zusammenarbeit. We are an organization actually founded in the 1970s by the German government back then, and we are implementing on behalf of the German government, but also mostly for the EU, projects in the global south for the aim to have to create a future worth living around the world. So the GIZ in general, I will also show you a little bit of numbers, is again the aim with different topics. So I'm here representing quite a niche, but different topics, different projects, different collaborations with other governments in the global south, for example, for international educational work, and but also to provide opportunities also in collaboration with businesses for the aim of developing a better setting in the partner countries where also the national economy can flourish in different topics, but always aligned with the German principles on the basic law. So we are almost 25,000 people working globally. We are quite international, but also we are very proud about it. We have over 50% of our staff is female, and we are operating in 120 countries. So this is also important having in mind when it comes to global logistics. So almost in every port you got your goods from, probably there's a GIZ office and project working there. We have also over 4 billion in business value, mostly, as I said, we are working on behalf of the German Ministry for Development Cooperation, as one of the biggest donors and also co-owner of the GIZ. This project especially is working on behalf of the German Ministry for the Environment. So there's also a strong focus from the environment and climate perspective. And we have also, of course, co-financing from the EU. So this is like in general, like the whole company, but now let me give you a little brief insight into the project cluster I'm part of. It's called ProClima. So ProClima is supporting countries for the implementation of the Montreal Protocol, and now for the last 10 years for the Kigali Amendment. So this is a strong focus on refrigerants, especially on the phase down and phase out of ozone depleting refrigerants in the countries. So there we are working on 3 main pillars, which is like the training of technicians. So this is also mainly, for example, for ACs, the new technology when it comes to natural refrigerants, which is CO2, propane, it's also called R290, and ammonia, for example, for industrial sites. The second pillar is policy and regulation advice when it comes, for example, the quotas for the import of certain refrigerants, but also for the guidance for the building codes, for example, so which allows then at one point that propane can be installed in buildings. And last but not least, the technology transfer. So all of our projects are working on these 3 pillars, including also mine, the Greener Reefers project. So we have a long-standing experience and collaboration with projects in the Global South. We have a huge experience and also training concepts for training of technicians, because the maintenance and services is a crucial part of every technology, and especially when it comes to natural refrigerants, but also to avoid any future emissions from the existing synthetic refrigerants. This a little bit like a scope where I'm coming from. Again, also just a footnote and disclaimer, GIZ has no commercial interest, so we are a non-for-profit organization. So this project is actually working to create an environment with these different stakeholders for this new technology of natural refrigerants. Again, I'm very happy to have this dialogue. I'm not here to sell you a new product, but to shed some lights on actually the topic of refrigerants when it comes to reefers. And in the cluster, we are working also internationally. For example, with UN organizations, again, we have like this focus on the Global South. And I would now like to invite Juyu again to set up the second poll, because what is the issue with refrigerants for reefers?
Yes, I am ready to do this. Okay. I hope you can see this on my screen. So before we proceed, we would like to know from the audience, on a scale from 1 to 5, how would you rate your organization readiness and awareness regarding PFAS, or also called forever chemicals, found in maritime components? So think about, well, particular case about cooling system or packaging, insulation, and so on and so forth. So please, we'd be very much interested to know. So, okay, it seems that we have quite a good, well-prepared audience. So most of the people sit in the middle. So 50% of you gave a vote of 3. So just another 5 seconds, and I would say that definitely the winning is that you feel like averagely confident on the topic, 50% exactly. So yeah, that's interesting. So Kirsten, back to you.
Great, thank you very much for the feedback, because this also guides me a little bit for the next steps, because PFAS is a topic when it comes to refrigerants, which a lot of people do not connect. So when I think about forever chemicals, it's about the packaging. Maybe you are aware about the Teflon discussions from the 80s, but PFAS are also existing in refrigerants. So in the EU, we have the EU F-gas regulation now for 2 years, which is regulating a lot regarding also the avoidance for synthetic or ozone and climate depleting refrigerants. And currently there are negotiations on EU level for the EU REACH regulation, which will regulate PFAS as well. So there are currently a lot of discussions. What does it mean and for which area? Because PFAS are almost everywhere, but especially in refrigerants, which means on the land side, especially in the EU, but then also with the Kigali and Montreal Protocol, there are a lot of regulations in place to decrease actually also the availability of ozone depleting or climate hazardous refrigerants. When it comes to the maritime transport, this is not so regulated. And therefore, currently 96% of the reefers which are operating globally, their refrigerants, if it's like released to the air or atmosphere, will deplete into PFAS. There's a different percentage. The current one is to 20%. And a future one, which is a lot of the manufacturers are working on, will deplete to 100% to PFAS, which is from our point of view, a risk. Therefore, that the currently this refrigerant is not used there, and it's also the knowledge for the maintenance is not yet existing. But, and that's a good side, there is an alternative. And therefore, in this project, we are working also closely with the Kühne Climate Center to transform or to push for a transition for natural refrigerants in reefers. Again, currently, so also the demand is very high for reefers. So there's a market increase by 8%. All of you are using or are dealing kind of with reefers or need the service of service providers for reefers because your goods are perishable and need a constant temperature. So this comes to the next point, just a little overview regarding the different refrigerants. So we last year we released a white paper where we actually compared the different refrigerants also to assess like does it make sense for natural refrigerants also to go in this market, because they are very well established when it comes, for example, for trains. So especially in Germany, the trains are running with propane. They are very used for heat pumps and ACs. So again, in Germany, that's where I'm have a lot of knowledge. The majority of heat pumps in Germany are running with propane. So actually it's a quite established and very well used refrigerant with all the different downsides, but it works. Stationary, it works very, very well. Also mobile, there are more and more companies working also, for example, for trucks and trailers. So we compared the first line, R134A is like the refrigerant which is used 96% of the reefers globally right now. As you can see, it has a high global warming potential, which means it's climate hazardous, and it also contains 20% in PFAS. For the three refrigerants for the future, because right now the manufacturers and the shipping lines are kind of on a crossroad where to go, a lot of them exploring the option of R1234YF. It's a little bit complicated, so in short, it's always called YF. This depletes to 100% to PFAS. So 100%, so if there's like a leakage or if, for example, a technician like opens a valve, 100% of this will be depleting into PFAS. And this is also a health risk. The next one, propane, and there we'll explain a little bit later in our proof of concept, is a pretty good refrigerant. It has no climate, no ozone, or no environmental negative impacts. It needs to be handled safely. So there's a flammability. It's a topic, but again, if the design is working well, if the people are trained, it's not an issue. And there's also CO2. So there's right now a technology for reefers in place by the company Carrier Transicoid. I also have been in contact with Daikin, for example. They're also working on CO2 units. So this would be also an option for the future. But this technology needs a lot of energy. So then it's like a kind of the decision. Okay, you have like a refrigerant, which is environmental friendly and also climate friendly and no negative impacts on the environment, but it needs a lot of energy, which is like during the voyage. And this goes back to the first question, like just the use of containers, on reefers during the voyage is an increase of 60% of the emissions. And therefore, it's not yet clear if CO2 will be the way forward from our point of view. Propane has the highest chances also due to its performance. Coming back to PFAS, just 2 or 3 weeks ago, the EU actually published a study about the health issues and impact, and that it's growing costs for the health system, because especially in Europe, we have a lot of PFAS toxicity due to it's a refrigerant used in cars for the mobile air conditioning. So for the passengers in these cars. And therefore in EU, the main source are refrigerants for PFAS. And this is a lot, of course. And this is also in the drinking water in Europe, again, like because here is like the main toxicity. Again, this refrigerant itself is not yet in use in the global south. So that's why we have this experience in Europe. So we can already avoid this to bring it out in the world. And another point when it comes to this YF refrigerant is there are only 2 companies globally, American companies, who have the mandate to produce this refrigerant, which means also the costs of the refrigerant itself, like to procure it, will rise more and more and more. So there's like, when it comes to costs, there's like the health costs, like the side effects, health costs, and it's also flammable YF. It has this toxicity for the environment, but also for humans. And itself, the cost for YF will also increase from our point of view. So if you would like to read more about it, we have a white paper published last year. We also will publish in the next weeks the Spanish version of it, where you can read through all the numbers and what we established. And it was also prepared in consultation with shipping lines and manufacturers, also to double check, of course, the numbers, what we published there. So when it comes to the real emissions, besides the PFAS topic, we went through different scenarios because there's the EU F-gas regulation, we have the Kigali Amendment, we have also the International Maritime Organization Net Zero strategy. So we had like a whole simulation about different scenarios when the shipping industry in total comply with the different policies and what is possible. And it shows that, for example, with R290, a rapid adoption, which means this technology would go into the market quite quickly. And there are a lot of shipping lines and manufacturers, but also cargo owners like you requesting this. It would achieve a huge amount of emissions reductions, because emissions from reefers coming from the consumption of energy, of course, it needs electricity to get running, but also the leakage itself. So as I showed beforehand, the current used refrigerant R134A has a global warming potential of 1,560 in comparison to CO2. So it's huge. Although there's like small amounts going around, but every leakage, every open valve is a huge climate hazard. So what did we achieve so far with the project itself? Just a few slides to this, and then I'm also soon will close my presentation, and I'm very happy then to hear your questions, but also the discussions. So what we have achieved so far, again, as Gia said, we are working in the Global South mainly. So we are collaborating with Costa Rica and South Africa also as the major hubs for export, in Costa Rica especially for bananas, and in South Africa also, for example, wine, but also grapes and other goods. So the training, not only to focus on the technology, but the training on the humans is so important because it's like an upskill. It avoids emissions if the maintenance and service is pretty good. And it also increases the trust in the technology. If you are aware, yes, there are people out there who know how to maintain these services. So here we are collaborating with training centers, but also, of course, with the ministries, for example, in Costa Rica, with the Ministry of the Environment and for education. Another pillar is our proof of concept development, which we are working right now with Thermo King and the Technical University in Valencia. So we want to demonstrate that R290 isopropane is the best refrigerant for the future, and it's also usable in the maritime environment with all the requirements in place. So there is an ISO standard actually developed a few years ago, which is set out all the criteria when a technology with flammable refrigerant is safe. So therefore, there's a common standard, there's a common agreement in the shipping industry. So we are now doing the next step to develop this proof of concept, and it already shows that we have 10% less energy consumption just by switching out the refrigerant in comparison to R134A. So again, it's a proof of concept, so there needs a lot of more time for the development, but with all the optimization of the different components, etc., we are assuming there's even the achievement of less energy consumption, but also a lower charge. So this is also a lot for shipping lines. a question about how much would it be. So right now we are in 1.5 kilos of propane, which is a lot less refrigerant. Also propane, as you may be aware about it, is like a side product of oil production, okay, but it's very cheap. It's very, very cheap. Globally, again, as I said, with the other competitor refrigerant, YF, it's a synthetic, so it needs to be produced. And of course, these companies wants to cover the costs. So there's like also, there will be quite a cost difference coming to this. And another product we created together with the Kuhne Climate Center and the Kuhne Logistic University, reefer emissions and cost saving simulator. I will share the links to this in a second, where you can also compare the different costs. Again, like from, you can choose a vessel, you can choose a route, you can choose a good. It's like, and then you can also see with which refrigerant, for example, what are the costs in comparison to the other refrigerants. And you can also play around. So we have two versions. One is like more the simple one for like clicking around and easy, but there's also advanced ones where you can manipulate certain indicators if this is like, if you have more knowledge. And I think this is also quite helping also to make a more educated guess. So again, this session is more for the to have this dialogue and also to raise awareness about PFAS, because I'm very much aware that a lot of shippers are working within their production line to avoid PFAS for different very good reasons. But mostly the refrigerants itself are kind of a blind spot. And there's also like this, having this dialogue with the different logistic providers, but also with the manufacturers about to ask, okay, what is the status of the development with natural refrigerants? Also here from a lot of the shipping lines, they say it will be the future, it's just a question when. So from GIZ side, we try to make this demonstration, we make these examples, we are preparing the environment also with trained technicians to also speed up this process, to speed up also the decisions for the manufacturers, but also for the shipping lines to go with natural refrigerants, because right now it's kind of a chicken egg problem. And that's also why I'm very glad for the invitation by the Smart Freight Center for presenting you this topic here regarding the possibilities. Because it's like right now kind of a stealth. So the manufacturers are mostly saying we do not have customers for these technologies. And shipping lines say like this technology is not yet available. Why should we bet on this? So you as cargo owners have here like the possibilities to have this dialogue and raise the questions. And I hope with this presentation I could give you a little bit more ideas for a collaborative effort. So my last slides are about what comes next for the project. And so number one is we will, as I wrote there, the chicken egg problem to kind of break up this stale, to have like this dialogue in a like triangular or with more stakeholders together. We will continue the trainings in Costa Rica and South Africa, but also we will create a training concept which is publicly available. So all training centers, for example, in the Philippines or in Venezuela or in Kenya can download it and implement it. So also to increase the knowledge for the technicians so that the maintenance and services are increasing more and more and more. So on the one side to avoid any emissions from the current technology, but also to be ready for the future ones. And in a few months, we will have some activities around the Hamburg Sustainability Conference. It's end of June. And I would be glad to invite you to some of them. We have, for example, in plan a network breakfast on the first day. I think we will have a side event on the second day. And with this, I would like to thank you for your time and listening, and also very happy to answer all of your questions. Our project activities and also in general knowledge topics around PFAS, about the maritime industry when it comes to refrigerants, we publish on LinkedIn especially. Here's also the white paper, and in a second I will also share the links to the other topics and tools. I hope I could give you good insights. It's a lot of information, but I'm very glad to be here and also to have this dialogue with you and answer questions, or also maybe you have some ideas how to go forward further. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Really great presentation. Thank you so much, Kirsten. Before we move into Q&A, I saw that we have one question for sure. I just want to rectify that while I was presenting the first poll, the correct answer was 90%, not 60%. So apologies about that. Perhaps I will start with the first question that I see from Andrea. And the question is, are there any numbers of average use leakages per reefer container available there?
Yeah, so the numbers which we use for our white paper also to go into the future until 2050 for the emission mitigation potentials for the different technologies, we assumed 15% of leakage rate for the refrigerant. But there's a huge discussions around it because actually for the shipping lines, they buy new products. Of course, if it's new, there's like also a smaller chance for any leakages, and they're mostly reselling their new reefers after 5 to 8 years. So they have a very young fleet. So therefore they say it's only 5% in this first phase, but reefers have a lifetime of like 20 years. So then it goes to the secondary market, which is also by smaller shipping lines, for example. And within the 20 years, we are with our 15%. This is also based on literature research. So in the white paper, we have also, it's almost like kind of scientific paper. We have a lot of sources quoted. So in average, we say it's 15%. Again, shipping lines or manufacturers will say, no, our products are the best. It's lower, close to 5. Again, we are looking from the whole life perspective of the reefer.
Oh, fantastic, thank you. I have a question before I ask my question, just for the audience to know that if you prefer, you can also unmute yourself and ask your question directly to Kirsten, or you can use the chat or the Q&A, whatever makes you feel more comfortable with your question. So from my end, so it's interesting to see that, of course, you have quite a broad range of activity, and you have these active projects, right, that you mentioned. One of them was in Costa Rica. So so introducing new refrigerants. So what about maintenance and service? So what's the plan there to train technicians, because you're changing technology? So yeah, I was just curious about that. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think with every technology, it's the same also with the car, right? You trust the garage with your car where you know there's a good service and the people are well trained. And that's the same also with especially new technologies, that people needs to be in place who are certified, like proof to have this knowledge to handle the flammable refrigerants. Because what I did not mention yet, the YF refrigerant, who has like this 100% depletion to PFAS, is also flammable, which means there needs to be some safety systems in place. For example, for ports, there are like more requests. There needs to be also for the in the depots, so the maintenance and service guys and women. Unfortunately, there are not so many women. We also try to increase their more awareness with certain issues and tools. They need to be trained, and therefore we assume that already with trained technicians, because right now there is not an educational component or module in place at all. So these technicians, they're mostly certified refrigerant technicians for ACs or whatever technology cars, and they are learning to maintain reefers on the job. So it always depends with who you're working with, what is their knowledge, what's the practice in the depot. And so we have this collaboration with the training centers, for example, in South Africa, the Accra Training Center. And there we are also approaching the local depots to bring in their technicians. So the first round of trainings is for free. It's for the depots. They have to give like 3 days to the reefer technicians. It's a 5 days training. And this will continue also because it's more knowledge is always better. So this would increase also the already current leakage rate for the current technologies on the one side, but then also the technicians will gain the knowledge to deal with flammable refrigerants, what they have to be aware, what are the safety criteria, how to behave around it. For example, not when they open the valve, not smoking a cigarette next to it. But I think the majority of technicians are already aware about this. But yeah, so we are continuing this collaboration. We bring in this knowledge and encourage the training centers and the depots to take a look on it.
Fantastic. Thanks for sharing. Perhaps another question for myself is that so we organize this session, and thank you again for presenting for the benefit of the community. We have a variety of stakeholders from maritime. Based from your perspective, what could be something that you would like to see from maritime players to tackle this topic? Like yeah, perhaps maybe it would be great to hear for the benefit of our members.
Absolutely. So what from again, we as GSZ, we are like the newbies, but also the outsiders in this like cargo shippers industry. What we would appreciate is like this discussions about the refrigerants, what is used for the different during the supply chain, for example. So we are mainly working with fruit producers currently. So bananas is like the main good transported by reefers. So we're discussing with them the whole supply chain, also like the warehouses, the ripening houses, but also the transport, like all the time. These bananas, for example, need to have a constant temperature. To just check with the logistic service providers, what is the refrigerants? Because mostly also when it comes, for example, for electric trucks, so a lot of people thinking about, okay, how to avoid emissions. Okay, electrification is the solution itself, but they're almost also online, you always never find the information which refrigerant is used. And there are still also possibilities out there with natural refrigerants. The main players are still using synthetic one because there seems to be not yet the push also by their customers to have this dialogue or to do this step. They're like, we have an electrified truck. That's fine, right? But this next step, like again, it's like a blind spot, the refrigerant. And as I showed, the global warming potential is huge. And it's so easy to avoid it because the technology is proven, is out there. So now with the reefers, as I shared, we are like in the proof of concept stage. But there's a lot of dialogue already going on by different shipping lines. They are aware about it. What can be done, it's more like to speed up the process itself. And this, I think, could be done by questions by cargo owners, especially to ask, okay, what kind of refrigerants are you using? Because currently, this dialogue seems to be not happening yet.
Fantastic. Thank you. So we have a couple questions for you. So I'll start with the first one. So a question on operational conditions. As a logistics sustainability specialist with over 20 years experience in the maritime shipping industry, I have seen several instances of reefer damages in CFS, port, yards, highways, truck stops, mainly while loading and unloading. Many times it damages the reefer system and requires local mechanics for topping up the refrigerants and minor repair. Considering the high flammability of propane and non-availability of refill stocks everywhere, do you see a challenge here for wide-scale adaptation of this technology? Or adoption, probably. Adoption of this technology, I'm assuming.
Yeah, no, thank you very much for the question. And this is a valid question, I think, for every technology. Doesn't matter if it's natural refrigerants or like this YF technology. So there are already units from MCI in the market. Spare parts, it's a big issue globally to have the right spare parts available. Also with the current ones. So depending on the manufacturers, there's always you need to have if you have a product, you need the spare parts from this certain manufacturers. You cannot mostly use from another manufacturer. There are some complications. So yeah, spare parts is a big issue when it comes to flammable. So that's the beauty with propane. The system is not so different to the current one. It's mostly the failing components. So I don't know about incidents, but the failing components, it's the electronics and the compressor. And therefore the compressor, that's then for the additional companies. There are already some in place who have like checking all the boxes for flammable refrigerants to have a compressor. So I think they would be also happy to speed up or upscaling their productions and make it globally available. But yeah, the availability of spare parts is an issue. Doesn't matter if it's YF or propane in both sites. And the training, again, it's with our 30 years experience in ProClima, there are some systems already in place. There are requirements, national requirements for refrigerant technicians. In the EU is the EU F-gas regulation. So in the EU, every reefer technicians who are right now in training, not reefer, but refrigerant technicians who is in training is aware about how to handle propane. Absolutely. So this is like actually more a question about time. And when it comes to flammability, you need two criteria in place to have a critical situation. So one is that the air and propane mixture needs to be flammable. So if it's like mostly reefers are outside, they are like on the coast, they're on the harbor, and there's a lot of wind. So already there, this criteria, it can happen, but the possibility is very small. And the other one is there needs to be an ignition, which is like someone is starting a lighter, for example, or there's a fire next to it. But these are situations which are mostly not happening on a vessel or in a port. So there's also the maritime people are very, very much aware about what can a fire create, what kind of damage it can create. So if these two situations are in place, yes, then there's a very, very critical situation. But it's also the same for YF. If this is one of them is not happening, then there's no risk.
Fantastic, thank you. I have another question in the chat. So thank you for an interesting webinar. Is it possible to get CO2 data from the different types? And the list goes from the list of the gases that you mentioned, starting from R135A up to R744. So the request is if it's possible to share the CO2 data within the Clean Cargo platform to visualize the differences in CO2 equivalent.
Absolutely. So again, we are like a non-for-profit public agency, so we're happy to share all the data with the Clean Cargo community. Also, like within the white paper, there's like we have an executive summary. So for those who are like not have so much time, so within 5 pages, the main points are already compiled. But we also have an annex which explains more like the data and what our assumptions, why we choose certain points, and of course we also have like a huge Excel sheet and very, very happy to share this and have this dialogue also how to improve and have this collaboration with the Clean Cargo community.
Fantastic. And perhaps for everyone else, a good way to connect with Kirsten, if you're interested, is I shared in the chat a poll, a survey, and if you go through the poll, you can actually add your email, and we'll transfer your contact to Kirsten. And if I'm not wrong, she's also attending Smart Freight Week. So if you are attending, there's also chances to meet her in person, which is actually great. I have another question for you. So the question is, what can shippers do to support? As a shipper, we buy a transport services. We don't know the refrigerant used in our reefers today, and we don't know the safety, maintenance, refrigerant infrastructure, availability, cost, existing assets lifespan, all those dimensions behind it. This is not our expertise, but we would want to support. Thanks for the question.
Yeah, thanks for the question. Also the offer to support. So already that you are here in this call and gain this knowledge is already the right, from my perspective, the right step in the in our common direction for a more global environmental goods and decarbonizing transport. So of course, you as companies, it's not your main operation. It's not your in the focus of your day-to-day work. Again, like to have this questions, and it can be part of your sustainability strategy, for example, or like another point of view for decarbonizing about the footprint of your products. To have this in mind, because mostly right now it's about the fuels, for example, for the vessels, and what are the new technologies. Also, again, for example, the electrification of trucks and trailers. Just ask these questions. Let's see if you get the right answers. I know shipping lines and logistics service providers mostly have the answers, not all. But again, they then need to start the work. So, and it's also about cost. So at one point, as I said, like this YF refrigerant, it's highly used in our cars here in Europe. If you actually drive an electric car, you have a high chance that it's with a natural refrigerant, can be propane or CO2 already in your system. Because also here in the EU, we have this regulation for the cars. If you have a combustion car, then probably YF. But it's the prices will increase. So at one point, I think these costs, increased costs due to the refrigerant, increased cost to other situation as we have right now, will go to you as cargo owners. So I think this is then also valid questions as cargo owners to your service providers about, okay, what is the plan with this refrigerants, with the prices? Because at one point you will have to pay it. If the logistic provider will want to use this technology. So yeah, being here is already the best first step, and just ask the questions, have this dialogue, and gain the knowledge, and maybe also internally check if this could be part of your sustainability strategy, or if not, also another point would be to check with your the buildings you have your office in it. So natural refrigerants is not only for the freight transport. It's also a question about your the buildings you're working in, your offices. To have this dialogue is also kind of a so I'm with this project now for 2 or 3 years. So now every time I'm traveling, also outside of Europe, I'm checking the ACs actually what kind of refrigerant is used. So maybe I can spark this interest and this broader view also in you. And this is already the best way, again, like the same as with the spare parts. It would take time, but to have this first spark, this first seed implanted in your brain regarding what is possible is already the perfect first step.
Fantastic, great answer. I think I'm gonna start checking the air conditioning refrigerant too from today on. It's another thing to be worried. So I have another question from same person. Do you have figure on cost increase per shipment with natural refrigerant? It is a closed loop, so the impact must be very low for shippers.
Absolutely. Again, like with the propane one, we are like in the proof of concept stage. And so there will be, it depends always with new technologies, like the longer it is in the market, the lower will be the costs, because then the market gets used to it. It was the same also with solar power panels. So I am assuming, so currently a reefer costs 15,000 euros. I'm not sure if you're aware about it, but if this reefer is used for 4 voyages, afterwards it's a cash cow because it already got in all the investments. So yeah, probably for with propane, I'm not sure about YF. It will be in the beginning, the first years, maybe a bit higher, but over the years it will decrease the cost due to probably also other manufacturers are picking up and produce like a competent unit. So yeah, the investment cost in for the first units will be a bit higher, but then it will go down as it happens with a lot of the technologies.
Interesting. Maybe another. I mean, because we're talking about costs, and you mentioned that CO2 is also technology that can be used as a refrigerant. Do you see any bridge between carbon capturing and the manufacturing of this refrigerant, CO2 base?
It's a good question. I have not thought about it yet. maybe, yes, there's a possibility. So it depends a little bit on, I think, to ask the manufacturers, like how kind of clean the refrigerant needs to be. So for example, with the propane one, in theory, you could also use the propane you're using for your barbecue outside, for example, or in some countries for the cooking and heating, but it's not completely clean. So for keeping up the lifetime of this technology, it should be a more clean propane. For CO2, I'm actually not, I will ask, I will follow up. It's a very good question. I have not thought about it yet. Thank you.
No, no worries. It's just that I've read an article that there are many manufacturers that are pushing to make CO2 capturing system miniaturized, like small, to be installed on various applications, and one of them could be to actually take CO2 emission directly at the source for ships, vessels, or cars, and I was just thinking while you were talking through your presentation, how cool would that be to capture CO2 and to use them directly on the vessel in a closed loop to deal with the leakages. But maybe just it's me like going beyond, above and beyond with your presentation, and technology. Okay, so I don't see other questions in the chat. Please, if the audience, you can also unmute yourself if you would like to fire your question. But yeah, we would like to ask if you have the opportunity to go through the the survey, that link that we added in the chat. That would be very helpful for us to understand if you enjoyed the best practice area session, where do you think we should go next, and of course, if you want to have the opportunity to connect with Kirsten. And I would say I don't have any other questions. So thank you so much, Kirsten, for today. Please, I see your hands raised. Please go ahead. We still 10
physically,
minutes.
actually.
Yeah.
No, perfect. Also, so from my side, again, thank you very much to you, Julio and Julia, for the invitation to make this happen. Also for me, the opportunity to share a little bit our work and what we are doing, and to hold up the flag for natural refrigerants. It was very also for me, learning in this with the questions about what's the thinking with the cargo owners. Thanks for this, absolutely. Just for those who are maybe interested for understand what we're doing in the margins of the Hamburg Sustainability Conference, I shared the link. So today, 2 p.m. CET, we have like a short session. Again, it will be a little bit repetitive because of some of the information I shared here. You will also hear there, but there we are also reaching out right now to supermarket chains, for example, for pharma industries, etc. So other cargo owners, also to raise their awareness. And we are again planning some activities around this Hamburg Sustainability Conference. It's in the end of June, 29th and 30th in Hamburg. We will also show there the prototype itself, so the containers. So if you have not yet seen it, please come around. We have also a little tour. And looking forward to hopefully see you at the Smart Freight Week in Amsterdam or then in Hamburg.
Fantastic. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing. And indeed, I'm really looking forward to see you in person, Kirsten. And thanks everyone for joining today. Really appreciate your time. And if you have any other question that we didn't cover, please feel free to reach out to us. We'd be more than happy to take your question offline. And for the time being, we give you back 7 minutes of precious time. Thank you, Kirsten. And you all have a very nice day, afternoon, or evening, depending on from where you are connecting. And see you next time. Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.